Right, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to today's Cabinet meeting. First thing that we have to do is read out a statement about recording. I'm advised to inform you that this meeting is being videoed. Members of the public are entitled to record the proceedings and are requested to give prior notice so that any additional measures that may assist can be put in place. Any member of the public who has any concerns should raise them now. Nothing obvious, so we should carry on. Thank you. Item 1 on today's agenda is apologies for absence. David Turner and Alan Mosley, which Ted's deputising for you. Just keep the seat. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. Are there any around the table? Slight trouble with the microphones, do apologise. We'll get it fixed shortly. No pecuniary interest. Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of 14th of October and the minutes of the 28th of October. They have been circulated. Is everybody happy that they're approved? Proposer, Simon, Tim, in favour? Thank you. Right, item 3, public questions. We have 2. Mr. Dennis Gulduran?
Yes. Shall I propose?
Come on, yeah, please over, sir. The response to your question has been tabled and circulated, so you have a supplementary.
Yes, in short, we are aware that Shropshire Council is launching their big conversation, and I'd just like to ask, in the context of the response we've received, what the Cabinet's plans are for involving young people in getting responses to the big conversation, and if there are any steps that they'd like Shropshire Youth Parliament to take at this time.
That's a very appropriate question, I think. Anne, would you like to say?
Very much so. Well, yes, of course, obviously, we value the input of young people at every point, and we value your input immensely, and you will be featured very, very high on the list of consultees, and I think there are plans also for forming focus groups subsequently, and that's going to be a very wide representation of age, which of course will include very young people as well, and we will be using student councils because obviously those are democratically elected by the schools, and I do recognise those as a real a source that we must be very much aware of, because within all the schools every year there is a representation in every single school, juniors, seniors and secondary and primary. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, happy with that? Second question, Mr. Bernard Wills from Quarry Forum.
Good afternoon. My question is the primary aim of the future swimming provision of the council. Is it to increase participation?
Just to be clear, we've had the question. Hopefully,
yes.
You've had the response. Have you got a supplementary to that?
Yes,
question?
I do. From the response, the primary aim of the new facility is to increase participation levels to impact positively on the community health and well-being. The predicted usage at the Shrewsbury Sports Village in 2020 is 487,000. In the options report, it is considerably less than the total activity at the Quarry and Shrewsbury Sports Village in 2015. This option therefore indicates a considerable decrease in the total participation levels. We have, as the forum, issued a response document to the options report, which we believe was circulated. It is available. It is 26 pages long, and it answers all of our concerns that were in the options report.
In feedback to that, Mr. Wills, I've seen the report and read it in depth, and it is a very comprehensive feedback from the forum, and we welcome that. That will form part of the full analysis. We've had an awful lot of feedback through the whole consultation process, and that response will be part of that. Obviously, we're going to go away and we're going to evaluate all the responses and make a considered opinion. It was going to be early New Year. I think now it's been pushed back a few weeks, just purely due to the amount of response we've had back and the due diligence and the assessment of those responses that we've got. So, welcome the report which you put in, and it is a valuable tool and will certainly be utilised.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, item 4, matters referred from scrutiny. There are none. Item 5, reports from scrutiny. Final report of the student accommodation task and finish group. Theme.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Hopefully you've all had a chance to see and digest the final report from the task and finish group. I'm just going to go through the recommendations so that we can all be absolutely clear exactly what it is that we're recommending and how we've come to those conclusions. Now, the first recommendation, the local plan review should consider specific policy formulation for HMOs, comes from the basis that you can't take any planning policy measures without a link back to the core strategy. So when we carry out a review, which is scheduled for the core strategy, what we're recommending is that a policy be included in that which links into HMOs. Now that feeds into the second recommendation, which is around a HMO SPD. Now you can't introduce new policies through a supplementary planning document. However, you do need the supplementary planning document that links into the core strategy policies to inform any action to be taken in the future. So before any action can be taken, both of those need to be lined up. Now, the third recommendation seems a rather odd one in asking for the establishment of a HMO database, but that comes from the base of not having a base level of HMOs. To start with, one of the first questions we asked in the task and finish group was, how many HMOs are there in Shrewsbury? And the answer was, well, we don't know, because the ways of collecting them are different. So we need to establish exactly how many HMOs there are and how many that are added in each year before we can actually judge whether there is a problem and action needs to be taken. Now, 4 and 5 are linked together through the accreditation part. There's been a briefing, we asked for a briefing paper from licensing, which is attached as Appendix B and Appendix C to your report, which details the accreditation policy. We believe that the accreditation policy will be an absolutely vital tool in ensuring the quality of the education, the quality of the accommodation, and the long-term sustainability of accommodating students in the private sector in Shrewsbury. And recommendation 5 adds to that from a site visit Andy Evans and I made to Worcester University and Worcester Council, and seeking to learn from some of their best practice. And so those are the recommendations, and that's what's behind the recommendations. Before I close, I'd just like to say that there's been a lot spoken about student accommodation and about potential challenges that it raises. However, before you can act, you need to have locally based evidence, a robust local evidence base. Otherwise, any action you take will face a legal appeal. Now, that evidence cannot be referred from other towns and other cities as to what experiences they've had with student accommodation. It has to be purely based on experiences in Shrewsbury. That is why we're recommending evidence gathering and putting policies in place now, before any problems arise, if they ever do, and we all hope that they don't. I think I've covered it all as quickly as I can, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dean. Roger. We just need to change the batteries in. Roger, you're right.
Thank you, Chairman. I was only present for the last one of the task and finish groups, but one of my fellow members was a member. He asked me to bring something to the Cabinet. Unfortunately, he's away today, and I understand at least one other member of the task and finish group supported it. I understand what the chairman of the task and finish group, that it needs to be evidence-based, but if I can read what he sent to me in an email, not able to attend the scrutiny where the report was presented, but essentially, in my opinion, the proposal is too cautious. There is considerable anxiety in the town that we shall get round to doing something too late, as has happened elsewhere, notably Chester. And he asked me to pass this on. I know, and I did bring it up at the last meeting, I think, was that Worcester is my home city, and I visit it fairly regularly and have relations living there, and their opinion is that Worcester is, how can I use the word, detrimental with the introduction of the university there. And I think the residents around Shrewsbury are wondering, do we have to wait for problems until things can be done, or can evidence start to be collected now so that it is evidence-based, or do we have to wait?
Yeah. Do you want to come in? Portfolio order?
Thank you,
Yep.
Deputy Speaker. I just wonder whether rather I should respond to that rather than Dean, although Dean's obviously been part of the task and finish group. I've sat in on many of the task and finish groups that they did, and I hear what's being said, Roger, and it's come up many times. Firstly, let's go back to the beginning. Do we all want a university in Shrewsbury? Everybody I speak to says yes. So I think that's the first positive about it, and I think it's started off on the right grounds. Do we want to deal with any potential problems coming in the future? Yes, we do, and we've said that from the off. And we've put in place a number of tasks that we were going to do. We may be a little bit late, I think, Dean, on this one, perhaps by a couple of months, because we delayed it to get some more information from Worcester. But we've gone away and did everything that we said that we'd do. Part of that process included, which I know what they want an Article 4 directive to be put on the town centre. If you put an Article 4 directive on the town centre without any valid reason, then you can be legally challenged. It's been made quite clear to us. And not only that, you put a lot of pressure on everybody who wants to put an application in. So if they do anything, they've got to come forward and put a planning application. So I hear the voice, but I think we've got to be realistic in this. Reference has been made to Chester. Chester's 19,500 students. I don't know what Worcester is. We're looking at maximum of 2,500 students. We've started off very slowly, and I'm encouraged by that, because I think it gives us the opportunity to manage things in the right way. If we take the progression slowly, the first part is Marble House. It's under occupied, so it's still got capacity. We have a phase 2 that's going to go forward on Barker Street, which again, so I think we have all we need with regard to the accommodation currently for the students that come into Shrewsbury. And that's without me talking about the potential for Shrewsbury Prison, but clearly there will be some within the private sector. I think to give credit to the task and finish group, we talk about scrutiny, we've been talking about ourselves this morning, how scrutiny works, and to be fair, this is a good example of when scrutiny is at its best. It's helped formulating the policy that goes forward for this council in the future to do the things that we all wanted to do, including protecting the people of Shrewsbury Town Centre. If I can just go on, Deputy Chair. The things that we've asked in, if I could just cover for Dean's benefit, you're quite correct about the core strategy and the housing SPD. They will be reviewed and they will take into consideration everything that you've said. The database, I think actually again, is a fantastic idea in its own right, without even thinking about the university. Why haven't we got a database that tells us where all the HMOs are and what we can do for them? So that I'll take as a taken. The third one, the accreditation scheme, I think this again, Roger, fits in well. You know, we're saying to students, and if we do it the right way, the accreditation scheme will go through the university. So anybody who's going to come to Shrewsbury will be advised to go through the accreditation scheme. So they will be guaranteed to get accommodation of a certain standard. What I will say, Dean, on a not a negative side, but just to put it to balance, I think some of the stuff that you're requesting, I would say, is essential, and I would say some of it is desirable. So I think we need to go away and look at that and decide which is which fits in best. So I welcome the report, Deputy Leader. I think it's an excellent report, and we will take it on board. Roger, I'm going to be straight with you, and I'll be straight with everybody else. We will not be doing an article 4 at this stage. We will monitor it very closely, we'll do the work, and if one is needed at a later date, then we'll clearly will do it.
Thank you, Mark. Claire, you want to come in?
Yes, please, just to say a few things. Firstly, Dean, thank you very much. Absolutely excellent report. I did attend quite a lot of the meetings, I listened to what people had to say. I think the thing about this is that you forget that the university is actually a joint venture between Chester University and Shropshire Council. Shropshire Council are very well aware of all the issues. Chester University grew from about 7,000 to 19.5 in a very short space of time. Shrewsbury University, or the University of Chester Shrewsbury, when it becomes an independent university, and the University of Shrewsbury, when it reaches about 2,500 students, will actually be operated under Shropshire Council. Or, you know, well, I certainly think we'll have a very strong involvement. So Mel looked at me there. And so we are in a very fortunate position. We're in a very different position than Chester. We have listened and we've seen for ourselves the issues in Chester, the issues in Worcester. You know, we don't want those same issues to happen here, believe me, and they will not. I can give you total reassurance on that fact. 2,500 is the maximum at the moment, and at those kind of levels, I cannot foresee an issue in the future. Thank you.
Dean, do you want anything else to say?
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you for the support, and as well, Roger, I'd like to just add that we all sympathise with the comments of the members whose divisions feel they may be most affected, and it was on their prompting that the Task and Finish group initially looked at this problem. We've gone through the process. We are doing as you requested. We are building up and collecting evidence. That is part of the recommendations. We couldn't do any more than what we've done, as you've heard, without facing a legal challenge, because we do not have a problem as it stands. And hopefully we will never have a problem, and we'll never have to go forward with any of those measures. And there are plenty of towns, and I could rattle off to you towns and cities that I've spoken to that don't have a problem. And so we shouldn't assume that's a given. I think what we've done is proportionate in terms of a response to public perception, and I hope that it will go some way to reassure the public who may be concerned that we are taking on board their concerns and we are reacting to them in a proportionate and appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I just want to echo what Claire said. It was a very thorough report, and congratulations on compiling it. Is everyone in favour that we accept this? Thank you. Okay. Scrutiny committees on the financial strategy, item B here. Under David's name, Tim. Tim?
Thank you. I'm quite happy to take it here, or I'm quite happy to incorporate it in when we look at the financial strategy. I really don't mind, because it's probably more relevant to take it within the financial strategy.
Seeing you're presenting both, I think that's a good idea.
But it's a useful paper. It was sadly delayed because of IT issues, I understand. But it's a good piece of work, and it will help inform the ongoing process. But we'll deal with it, if you don't mind, if nobody else minds, within the financial strategy paper itself.
Okay.
So I think it's next on the list anyway.
Okay then, we'll move swiftly on to item 6, which is the financial strategy. In the name of Tim.
And I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear a lot of me today, because the portfolio holder is on a cruise in the Caribbean. So it's fallen to me to spout at you. First of all, can I say to James particularly what an excellent paper this is. It builds upon the one that we saw in October. It's very, very detailed, very important for us all to take a grip of, because it shows us just precisely how the changes in the way the national government is dealing with local government spending are being dealt with, and how we're having to react to them. So with that, I will just make a few opening remarks, which will build hopefully upon what's in the paper itself. And those of you who haven't had a chance, this too came out a little behind the rest of the papers, I do recommend that you make the time to read this paper. It is fundamental to the future of this council. So the report sets out the next step in the financial strategy for the council. In October we received a report which was the first of these, setting out the wider context, with the expectation that further detail would be available at this meeting in December, which indeed it is. This report focuses on the 16-17 financial year and begins to set out more detail of the changes made to the existing 16-17 planned savings. Inevitably, of course, well, you can guess what the inevitable is. The report identifies 23 million of base budget savings alongside environment to adult services to help manage some of the in-year pressures being experienced, and the allocation of 9.8 million of one-off resources. And the report itself explains in some detail how those one-off resources arise and how prudent it is to continue with the process that allows those to arise. In addition, the report recommends an increase of 3.99% in council tax, which is made up of the 2% levy or council tax increase allowed for by the Chancellor in his autumn statement, together with 1.99%, which is what we may raise without having to have a referendum. The report also goes on to model an assumed increase of the same amount for the next 5 years, and identifies a number of pressures that have been identified following the Chancellor's speech in November. Now, members will appreciate, and one of the things that came out of the scrutiny work is that they were slightly concerned about the impact of that, and if we refer to paragraphs 9 of the financial report itself, it starts to talk about what's happened since the previous cabinet, one of which of course is the review of scrutiny of this paper. And we will be taking to a special cabinet probably in January the initial view of savings proposals for 17-18 and the years ahead, together with 16-17 in a rather more detailed way. Because members will have appreciated that what the strategy does is takes our services and splits them into 3 basic categories. Those that are protected, those that are maintained, and those that over time will disappear. Temporary as well. Temporary. Thank you, Clive, for correcting me. So we will start to have to look at far more detail at those services and the dissection of activities within those in January. If I turn to the Scrutiny Committee feedback, and paragraph 5 summarises it in their report, the members understood that the detail was not available, but they did see the high-level issues that were being identified. They highlighted concerns about the risk of unforeseen consequences of reducing or changing the service, and in fact that is covered within paragraph 9.2 of the paper itself. They were also quite concerned about the ability of Shropshire to continue to attract business growth and therefore to continue to invest in business infrastructure. And as we know, business rates will become increasingly important to this authority and all authorities, particularly those of us like Shropshire who don't benefit from the massive business rates income of some of the London boroughs. So we will need to focus upon our position between the two powerhouses, if you like, of the Midlands and the North East, to try and ensure that we get our share of business activity. Again, they talked about the scrutiny about getting the adult social care system on the sounder footing and integrating it better with the health. And I know Clive has been doing, as Chief Executive, some useful and valuable work with the CCG and with the Hospital Trust, and talking to others about some increased evolution type work on better integrating these activities. Again, they talk about the big conversation, and indeed if you look at paragraph 9.3 of the financial strategy, that's also covered. But I think scrutiny will be well placed as they recognise to take part in the next phase of the big conversation and to look carefully with Cabinet at how we progress this strategy into reality of a budget and a more formal strategy for the rest of the period, of the 5-year period it covers. So I don't think I want to witter on any longer about this except to commend to you the recommendations in paragraph 2. So Mr. Deputy Leader.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. I have Roger. Put in there, Roger.
Thank you. I'll call you Chairman, it's easier.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I do know this. I'm disappointed that nobody from the Scrutiny Committee can present their report. I'd have thought it should have been somebody from the Scrutiny Committee to actually present the report, which is an important one, because it does encompass the views of the other scrutiny committees and their input into this. And I think Tim was there for part of the meeting, but I think you needed to go out for part of it as well.
That's absolutely correct. I didn't do you justice.
Well, no. Yeah, whatever. But as I say, I'm disappointed that none of the scrutiny committee was here. But on the Cabinet report that's before you today, do have one or two comments on it, and that is in 5.4, the last sentence, I do pick up the sentence, alternative ongoing savings proposals will need to be identified before the 1st of April 2016 to ensure this does not leave future budgets in an unbalanced position. And picking up that thought, on page 9, I see that there is a savings requirement for 16-17 of £33.7 million to be made, which is far in excess of what was originally expected because of the continuing use by the Cabinet members of not being able to do the budget, 9.8 million of one-off resources. And that has been a continuing feature all the way through, the use of one-off resources all the time and not meeting the budget expectations as was set out in the February. Again, this is highlighted on page 10 in table 6, which shows there one-off budget to balance of £9.8 million. And that is a feature all the way through. And then again, in page 12 and 9.6, I see the introduction of the Star Chamber. That was used 2-3 years ago, and it failed then. I hope that this year it won't. But I can understand why the increases in the Cabinet are proposing to Council of the nearly 4% rise, looking at the budget there and the continuing use of one-off resources in order to get it to balance.
Thank you, Roger. I'd just like to push back that Cabinet members have not failed to deliver their budget. It's in an intensely difficult period that we're in. I presume that you're pointing towards adult social care, but that is a budget pressure which has its own life, if you like. We don't know what's coming through the door continually, and hence the problems that we have going forward. I would like to bring James in, if that's all right, James, just to talk through the figures which you're questioning.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It is an increasing feature that we've been using one-off resources over the last few years. you're aware of that because that's what we have reported each time. We've been very open and transparent about that. The need to use one-offs is basically because of the way in which the local government finance has changed over a period of time. So what we try to explain in the report is that as changes are made, we can either assume that those changes are in some way of benefit to the authority in a longer term way, and that then means that we have to find, if they don't turn out to be long-term resources, that we then have to find more savings to balance. Or we're trying to get ahead of the curve, look at what base budget we think we'll have in the future, try to get down to that, but then use those resources, those one-off resources, to help smooth that transition. So what we're saying here is this money, this figures that we've identified here, we could be using this year to try and balance the budget off this year, and then leave us in an imbalanced position next year. What we're saying is we need to manage this year's budget, which we're doing, and then we are ring-fencing these funds to allow us to then balance the budget for 16-17, but then also to look forward in terms of how those one-offs will then be replaced by permanent savings by the year after. So all the time we're using the information that we've got in the most prudent way that we possibly can, the most risk-averse way that we possibly can, to get ourselves to a balanced budget in future. While those one-off resources are there, we have to use them in the way that's most appropriate. What we don't do is assume that those are going to go there into the future. There are pressures across a number of services at the moment. Those have been identified, and as part of that, adult social care is overspending. As part of that, we've said we need to buy some money across, and we also need to take advantage of the opportunity to raise council tax generally, but also the 2% precept to allow us to start to build up that base budget into the future and look forward into beyond 17-18 into 2021.
Yes, Roger, you've asked this question before, and I'm going to reiterate some of the answer. I think James has explained the wider context, and I do think we're into new territory as we look forwards in terms of the amount of savings, which we've said in the strategy. We won't be able to meet those savings by redesign and efficiencies alone. There will need to be some cut back in services, so we are in a different place as we go forward. But as we look back on the use of one-offs, some of the one-offs, well, they occur for the reasons James said. I won't go over that again. But there are also other reasons, which I've said previously, where we plan a saving, we plan it for the whole year, but sometimes it's not possible to get that saving because you have to make redundancies or other things have to change, and therefore you get a part-year saving. And in some instances, although the savings are there and recurrent, they're not whole year, and the gap has been plugged with one-off. So we have got that happening, as well as all of the other things that James explained. So far, we have pretty well got recurrent savings in line with our budget. There are some issues, not least of all due to the overspend in adult social care, and as has been said, that is the most significant cost to us in terms of overrun, and actually is approaching, as we go forward, about half of the budget. So those are the reasons that we are where we are in terms of one-offs.
Thank you, Claire. Lee.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Chair. I've had new batteries. I'm reinvigorated. Yeah, I'd just like to respond to Roger's comment about the Star Chamber. Really, I think those of us that were involved in that process as portfolio holders will have found those sessions extremely challenging, pretty tough. Line by line review of aspects of our both spending plans and our ability to deliver efficiencies. And I think your point about not being able to deliver on savings in the past, whilst it's absolutely true, the reason that the approach is now much more likely to succeed is the fact that if you look in 9.6, it actually says that as a result of this, there is now a review of the model and a requirement to reduce the impact of efficiency savings on adult social care. So in other words, that process of that Star Chamber work has been exactly to do that, and that's an acknowledgement that we need to look much more closely about how we model the demographic increases and the impacts on our service within adults, and how we respond to that pressure. So, you know, we're working very hard on what is an extremely challenging environment, and you know, I need to make it to be absolutely clear from my perspective. 3.99% is what we need to do. I'm sure, in the light of the other considerations the government are making, they may not be enough. But this is the environment that we're in, and we need to work extremely hard to make sure that we deliver against it.
Thank you. Tim.
I just wanted to reiterate the point that everybody else has made, really, but in a slightly different way. The world has changed. We are no longer in the world of the early 2000s, where we had government funding through revenue support grant and things were like that. Not only is demography working hard against us, but we have a sea change in central government's attitude to taxation. And this is what it is. It's a sustainable business model in a new world. We can't just simply say, oh, you failed to deliver in the past, because it's not like that anymore. We have to look at a totally different selection of opportunities to ensure that we do continue to deliver the services we have to deliver. So this is an ongoing process, and I'm looking forward to sitting down again in January and looking at the next iteration.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, in terms of the scrutiny paper first, are you all happy that we accept that as a... Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Back to the main paper. Firstly, thank you, Roger, for your questions, and you know.
Can I have just one last comment, Chairman?
Yeah, if you're quick.
Well, if I can, I recognise the problem with adult social services, but if one looks at the table on page 9, there is 5.1 million of unachievable savings in adult services in 15-16, but if one looks down the rest of it, there is a lot more there, which is unachievable, put as unachievable savings. So it isn't only adult services, there are other areas as well.
Yeah, but believe me, myself and fellow portfolio holders are well aware of that. We've got some difficult challenges. I am heartened to hear that you're endorsing the rising council tax, though. I think it's
I noted at this time, I need to.
The one typo I've spotted in the recommendations on recommendation E, recommend to council on the 9th of December 2015, should be the 17th, obviously. With that amendment, are you all happy that we accept
Yeah.
And Tim's proposal today? Guess who? Tim, Treasury Management.
Is I again. This is a pleasing paper to present, because once again it presents a picture of the excellent results achieved by our Treasury team. Bless you. We've achieved a return of 0.58% in the second quarter of 15-16, outperforming the benchmark of 0.22%. Additional income of 95,000, which every little helps, you should be saying. We make assumptions, of course, about the levels of borrowing and investment income over the financial year, so it's useful when these are overachieved. We currently have about 150 million held in investments, as shown in the paper, and borrowing of 332 million at fixed interest rates. So the net position we are managing very effectively, and rather than dwell any more on the paper, I simply move the recommendation, which is to note and accept the position set out in the report.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll second.
Seconded. All in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. Tim again.
That's great.
Strategy.
Strategy, we like strategy. This mid-year Treasury strategy report has been prepared in compliance with CIPFA's Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice and Treasury Management, and covers, as it says, the economic update for the first 6 months, a review of the Treasury strategy of the current year and the annual investment strategy, a review of our investment portfolio, a review of our borrowing strategy, any debt rescheduling undertaken, and a review of compliance with Treasury and prudential limits. Just the key points of the achievement we've already discussed in the first paper. and the fact that in the first 6 months Treasury management activities have been in accordance with the approval limits and prudential indicators. So it's really a tick, if you like, a big tick again on the activities of our Treasury team, who should be congratulated. So I move with the recommendation.
Thank you, Tim. Second, Claire. All in favour? Thank you. Item 9.
Yes.
Barbara again.
Well, Mr. Turner has a lot to answer for when he comes back from holiday. Setting the council tax base. This really is, if you like, a procedural issue. It's important because, of course, it's the council tax base for all our parish and town councils to set their precepts on. You will note the tax base level is written by 2.4%, which is in excess of the model we use, which is about 0.8%, which we model normally, and we will continue to model 0.8% on the grounds that good news is good news, but we don't want to over-anticipate good news. I don't think there's any point in labelling anything else within the paper, to be quite honest. It's a replay of what we've had in previous years, and I just simply move the recommendation.
Okay. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I do note that under recommendation 2.3, the 10,900 on Band D equivalents are excluded from this, which is equivalent to about 10%, I think, of the Band D. And under 6.3, I note that this council is compensated in respect of these houses which will not be paying any council tax. This council is also compensated on behalf of the parish and town councils, because those houses will not be paying parish and town council precept. And there is the council tax support grant, which this council decided last year not to pass on. And I understand, even though it was asked at the, and I understand it was asked at the Shropshire Parish and Town Council AGM, at which Tim was there, Telford and the Wrekin confirmed that they would be passing theirs on because they looked on it as parish council money and they were not keeping it. Tim has replied from a question there subsequently to confirming that Shropshire Council were going to continue to withhold it for next year. So these 10,000, 11,000 houses which do not pay council tax, Shropshire Council is being compensated for it, but the parish and town councils are not. So they're losing maybe 10% of their precept when they should be getting it. Is there any further comment that can be made, please?
Tim?
I'm more than happy to talk to Salk again on the subject, but at the moment I see no reason to change our position.
I think that's all the comment we can make at the moment, Roger. As you know, we're in a new position and we'll be looking at everything, but the status quo remains at the time being.
I understand that, and the leader-elect, if I can use that term, is here, and he may take it on board, and the cabinet may want to take it on board. But it is still on the table. It is not a good point as far as parish and town councils are concerned.
I think the leader-elect would like to take you on directly now.
Roger, I have every sympathy with the town and parish council. You know, I was actually chairman of SALT for 3 years, but I would just like to say I wish this authority had the balances that parish and town councils have at the moment. And we mustn't forget that parish and town councils do have that ability to precept money uninhibited by any cap that the government may impose. I know it's been difficult, but I've not yet any council that actually there's suffered any financial difficulty with that. I know in good times it would be something we would wish to do, but we're between a rock and a hard place, and really difficult and hard decisions have to be made. I'm sorry, Roger.
Do we have a seconder? Claire? All in favour? Thank you. Item 10, delegations of functions to Birmingham City Council, illegal money lending. Mal.
Thank you, Chair. Not just to give Tim a rest. Chairman, I looked at this first of all. This one you've actually done yourself. You moved a few years back yourself. And when I read it, I wondered what it was all about. And since I've been through it, I actually found it's quite an interesting subject and more in depth and more important just than I thought. As it says on the title, delegation of functions to Birmingham City Council, legal money lending enforcement. I think that's the warning for us. They have the skills and the ability to carry out the task. Apparently it's very time resourced to do this sort of work, and they've always done it on our behalf. This is to take the contract forward till 2021. I would like to draw people's attention to the appendices, because I think they're probably the most important parts of the document. The first one is that Appendix A is about the protocol. In other words, how will it work for Shropshire with Birmingham City Council. It tells you there about we have a nominated person within the council, within the regulatory services who will be dealing directly with Birmingham City Council. They will be kept informed of all the actions that take place in Shropshire on a regular basis and will be involved with it. It does make it quite clear that should our officer become involved with them on a case, then clearly they're under the instructions of Birmingham City Council and not us, if I read it correct. So that's the functions of it. Probably the more important even still is Appendix 2. And if you read through that, which doesn't make good reading, its functions or its four objectives are A, to find those perpetrators who are carrying out the loan and the money, and clearly the second one is to deal with them, so prosecute them. But what I did find reassuring was actually that there's a section there for the victims also. So they're actually looking to look after the victims. Well, I just want to refer to the last appendix because it says about illegal money lenders operate high proportion in rental accommodation and target the most vulnerable in society. Evidence shows that legal money lenders vary from those who lend £10 over a few days and demand £12 back, to those who provide substantial loans to those looking to set up businesses. The interest rates, it says, range from 100%, it says up to 117,000%. I'm not sure whether that figure's right, but even if it took a zero off the end of it, it would still be staggering. So clearly it's essential work that needs to be done even within Shropshire, so I'd ask that we do support it. Clearly we need to know that the most skilled people to deal with these people are operating in Shropshire also.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm happy to second that. No questions? All in favour? Thank you. Item 11, Shropshire Council Adult Social Care. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. The local account is here presented for noting and approval by Cabinet. We produce this on an annual basis. We work in partnership with people who have experience of a service and people who are carers and people who are from within our communities in Shropshire. And the purpose of the document is to look back at our experience in Shropshire, what it's been like for people who are in receipt of service and those people who are supported within our communities, and to measure their experience and our experience of that, and then to take a forward look to the next 12 months as to how we see our service progressing and the work that we do with the partners that we commission, and the environment and the scale of that going forward. So it looks forward, it looks back, and it also looks forward. I should just explain that the document itself is by convention titled the local account, but the group of people that we work with, not Shropshire Council officers, but real live people who live out there in our communities, felt that it'd be important the local account.
Time as a Shropshire resident.
I was feeling alive before you said that.
That calling it the local account didn't really mean anything to them, and so the document this year is Our Story Continues, Making It Real in Shropshire. The Making It Real board is the heart of the conversation that we have for people who use a service, and it's the work that they do with our reference groups across the county, and the way that they experience how we work in Shropshire, and the way that we feed that back into improving the service that we provide. And that layout, the sort of magazine-y style layout, is to make sure that anyone who has an interest in what we do has an opportunity to engage with the document and to be able to see what it means and what it's like to have support from us. It doesn't shy away from the challenges that we've got. Certainly, I think you'd agree, my section at the rear of the document is certainly not optimistic in terms of the prospects and the challenges that we face, and we're clear in here around the complaints that we have against our service and some of the difficulties that people that we support have. So, in conclusion, I commend the document to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand some of the difficulties the service is in and the pressures on it, and I sympathise with it entirely. But on page 141 of the Cabinet paper, or page 27, proportion, and it may only be minor ones, I'm not sure, I haven't got the history behind it, proportion of social care users who are satisfied with their care, 62.6%. Is this expected, or is it below expected? How is the trend? Has Lee got any more information behind that?
Yes, happy to respond to that, Roger. I think the difficulty from our point of view is that we don't get to set the questions, and the way that the percentages are worked out make it quite difficult for us to understand how these items are collated. I absolutely accept the challenge that that figure should certainly be higher. It's the proportion of people who find it easy to find information, isn't it? That you're referring to?
Yeah, well, it's
the ones satisfied with our care.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think what's interesting to counter that against is if you look at ensuring people's safety, and you look at the proportion of service users who say the services they receive have made them feel safe. The current figure is 94.4%. So I absolutely accept, and what I thought that you might have asked is around the proportion of carers that we support in Shropshire. And I think something that's come out of this and the work that we've done with our Family Carers Partnership Board is that it's very clear that we are also not seeing the level of support and provision that we'd expect for carers in Shropshire when we know how many people in Shropshire actually do have a caring role. And I've raised concerns about how we make sure that we have got a very clear offer to those people who are carers, and how we work much harder to get to them and make sure that they are properly supported. So, I mean, you are absolutely right. There are aspects of this that I absolutely see as a challenge, and that's very much part of this process and how we work forward with it.
Thank you, Pete. Do we have a seconder? Tim, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Moving swiftly on, and schools funding formula.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual funding formula that is proposed by the Schools Forum, which I then bring to Cabinet for ratification. Essentially, it's on the same basis as last year, so there's no change. So therefore, the recommendations are on the page, on the paper. I think that at this juncture, I need to just highlight the increased the importance of how we are working with the Schools Forum as a local authority. I think over the last few years we have moved mountains, really. Traditionally the relationship was not particularly good, and as administration representative I used to sit there and be quite severely criticised, but I do feel that we've now moved forward very, very well by forming two task and finish groups which we worked together with. We all came together. I think the chair of the Schools Forum has attended Cabinet, the leader went to the schools forum. So a very important relationship is now on a much better footing, not a very good funding, unfortunately. Also, I think we have, I need at this juncture just to highlight again, and I know Nick will want me to do this, the real issue we have with falling school rails in Shropshire. That has not gone away. The sustainability of the schools is again in question, and something we're constantly working with the smaller schools to work together, federate, and also we are now moving on to place planning for future provision to ensure that the provision is evenly distributed throughout the county and maintains the high standard which we expect throughout the whole of the provision from primary up to secondary. Obviously there are places in the urban areas, Market Drayton, Shrewsbury, where there are pressures on numbers, which is the exception to the rule, but it's absolutely essential that we are forward thinking with our provision, and we do work very closely again with the schools forum. So I'd like to recommend to Cabinet on page 2 that they accept the recommendation from the schools forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No, second by Claire. All in favour? Yeah. Thank you. Item 13, Chimlingham Performance Report.
Thank you, Steve. Now this performance report is really looking at outcomes that were put together to support the business plan and financial strategy 2014 to 2017. These outcomes are under review and may well be changed, or certainly will be changed when we move into the next and subsequent periods, but they are what they are at the moment. If you look carefully at them, there are some council outcomes, and then there are some societal outcomes, if you like. The council outcomes look at projected revenue spend. That's out of date because a cut-off period, it ends up out of date by a bit, so we've already talked about that today. You can see that we're spending outside of the council more than we intended to spend outside the council. The number of non-school full-time employees, full-time equivalent employees, I beg their pardon, has reduced from 4,200 to just under 2,700. We have now discontinued what we call the resident tracker survey because we've launched the big conversation, which in itself has started to produce interesting results, as we've seen already with the financial strategy, and with the help of members of the Youth Parliament, and our schools will hopefully produce significantly more input into decision making in the months to come. Basically, the Shropshire outcomes, the key message is one of stability. Children's safeguarding, there was an increase in the rate of looked after children during 2014. Numbers have now been stable for a year. On the tracking of second or subsequent child protection plans within 2 years of a plan ending, which is a key measure, again, we've got stability and better than target performance. On the environment, key message is one of delivering environmental benefits and protecting the environment for future generations. We've reduced CO2 emissions by part-time lighting, beg your pardon. Cabinet went to see the energy recovery facility at the Battlefield, which was an incredibly impressive place to go, and they are significantly improving on what I think many people had hoped they would be able to do. And the reduction in landfill is quite dramatic. Landfill really is only now confined to those items that are just not recyclable at all. So it's a very good performance there. The economy is improving. We've got improving rates of employment. We've seen the premises on the council tax register already in an early paper. And again, the last item here is health and social care, which we've talked about. Key message is improvements in some areas, but pressure on services. We know there are problems in delayed transfers of care. We work very carefully and closely with the hospitals, with the integrated team, which I can tell you from personal experience is a significantly better team than works on the Isle of Wight, where my mother-in-law has been dripping through the mill. So we should be congratulated there. And finally, the percentage of people in Shropshire with learning disabilities has a higher rate of employment than the national average. And although there's still challenges to improve this rate, and produce positive outcomes. This is better than average, and we should be congratulated for that. So all in all, I would ask Cabinet to consider the recommendations, and if there's anything that you wish to push forward to scrutiny of the scrutiny committee, then let's talk about it and we can do something.
Start off with Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just that two questions. One comment, I'm glad about the big conversation. I think it should have been done in previous years, but let's see where we go with that and see where the results are. One of the questions I would like asked in this big conversation, I know I've joined the project board, and that would be what residents' perception is about street lighting and the effect it has on their environment. I know what the anecdotal evidence is, but be interested to see what the residents feel. But the question I wanted to raise is in 5.4, and that is the number of full-time equivalents. Does that take account of the employees that have transferred to IP&E? So Shropshire Council employees, IP&E employed staff as well. So does that reduction encompass those employees transferred to IP&E or not? I don't know.
In terms of IP&E employees, yeah, it does take account of that, Roger. Most of the employees are still in the process of transition, so the big number hasn't actually happened yet, so it's still a small number. In terms of the big conversation, I think it's useful to know that the big conversation isn't a one-off, it's not just about the financial strategy. And the good news is that if we want to consult the public on street lighting or anything else, we've now got a really cost-effective way of doing it electronically. And should we decide at a future point, and it's not a decision taken, to ask the public about street lighting, we can now do it.
Exactly the point, don't we? Okay. All in favour that we accept? Thank you. Item 14 is under my own name. It's the Shropshire Small Businesses Loan Scheme, which is a very good scheme which is operated in partnership with other authorities, supporting small and medium-sized businesses to obtain funding where they cannot normally get it. I know that Madge had a quick word earlier asking me if she could speak, and I'm more than happy.
Yes.
I can say something before I move the report.
Thank you, Chair. In quiet session with the economy and small business, I know I get quite obsessive about it, but I welcome this paper, and just one or two comments I'd like to make. I see that the impetus contract, as it is at the moment, finishes in June next year, but we are appointing a director to the board. Is that to enable us to renegotiate, to continue the partnership with them or not? That's point one. Fund of funds on page 2, I always worry about these regional things because it seems to me that almost every time, despite any words that are said or printed, that those of us on the outskirts of the rural areas, in other words, Shropshire, Herefordshire, for instance, we're always last in the line for any funding because, of course, the big industrial, urbanised areas have a greater need than we have. I don't see it like that, but that's how it seems to me. If you look on page 4, there's an indication there that says that these funds are really needed. And I do think that since the economy's picked up, that there are small businesses that are looking to expand, even if the expansion isn't building a big factory, which is going to employ 1,000 people. It's just as important to expand than employ one extra person or even half-time. So I do welcome those things, and I would support anything you can say. Option 3 on pages 5 and 6 seems to encompass both option 1 and option 2. I mean, it's a cop-out as far as I'm concerned. All I can say is I fully support anything you can do with regards to loans, grants, etc. when it comes to small businesses of all size. Do you have a figure on small business? Is it people who employ less than 250 employees, or do you come further down than that.
Thank you, Madge. I'll just take your points in order. You mentioned appointing a director to the board. Gwilym Butler, I'm very pleased, has volunteered to go on the board. We haven't had a Shropshire director for some time, mainly due to geography, being in the southern part of Worcestershire. The board meetings, it's a fair trek for me as portfolio to get to. I have been to a couple of them, but I think Gwilym's well placed for that role, and I'm sure he will do well. The SMEs in the county and the fund of funds is all linked really. We discussed it at Let Board some time ago, and I know that Telford were very keen to shovel an awful lot of money into the fund of funds because it's for bigger businesses, and quite rightly that's where their mainstay of the economy is. I counted that I think it was 90% or maybe above 90% from memory. It's a while ago. Is below 20, I think. Was it 10 or 20 employees? So it's very, very small.
I would expect it to be like that.
Yeah, and that that reflects the entrepreneurial spirit of Shropshire businesses. So we are where we are. The fund of funds is in place, but it's at a lot lower level than it would have been if it hadn't been for Shropshire's intervention. Believe me. So I take on board the points you make, Madge, and they're very well made. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
And with that, I just move the recommendations 1 to 3 or ABC, whichever they are. Okay, thank you. Item 15, exclusion of the public and press. Thank you for coming. It's been moved. Seconded by Claire.